in mind, you can just get tools that do the job for you, that does it maybe not 100%, does it 80%, but still does the same job and helps you get there. So I'm not a big believer of spending a ton of money on all the tools out there. And I think that it's also, putting aside the FOMO of everything of like AI agents or whatever.
Sometimes you just need to implement things the right way or at the right time or with the right content. And sometimes it requires maybe a bit of back and forth or a bit of adjusting. But at the end of the day, we're not inventing rockets that fly into space.
Famine or feast, and when you have like something, a stable income, a stable work time, you're not also chasing the whole time for new clients because you have this steady stream of work that is coming in. If I look at it in perspective.
Welcome to Oh Frac, the podcast where top fractional leaders share their wins, struggles, and stories from the trenches. Hosted by Adir Ron. Fractional leaders share their wins, struggles, and stories from the trenches. Hosted by Adir Ron.
Welcome to Oh Frac, the podcast where we dive into the world of fractional leadership, the wins, the struggles, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adir Ron, fractional CMO. And my guest today is Shahar Heiman. Hi, Shahar. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. So, Shahar is the demand generation dynamo who splits his week between managing growth at fintech startup Bridgewise and boosting pipeline for CAD design platform Shaper 3D. From Tel Aviv hustle to Frankfurt precision, Shahar's proof that you don't need a six-figure martech stack to make leads rain. Just smart strategy, a lean toolkit, and maybe a double shot of espresso.
Yeah, that's a nice description, yeah.
Thank you. So again, Shahar, thank you for joining me today and excited to have you here. Let's kick this off with a fun little icebreaker question.
Yeah.
So you have a double economics and psychology degree. If marketing disappeared tomorrow, which discipline would you fall back on, and how would you use that to make money?
So I've always been intrigued in organizational psychology. Obviously, it's the middle ground between economics and psychology. It's something that during actually my Army service, I also had some dealing with it. And also, it was always a dream that I never really went down that path because life happened. But if I would restart today, that would definitely be where I'd go. Try and join like an organizational psychology gig.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid field, and I think that especially today, there's and then we'll probably talk about AI eventually at some point in our conversation today. But I think that even from an organizational perspective, so many things, again, especially in high tech startup scale ups, so many things are shifting and turning, and again, also very ties into our conversation today about fractional and the future of fractional, and very eager to hear your take and your journey, because I know it's a bit different than some of the other guests that I've had so far. But yeah, I definitely think there's going to be a lot of need for organizational psychologists in today's and the future's world of work.
Yeah, I think that talking about AI, it's not necessarily the topic of this conversation, but generally, also in the context of marketing, everything is becoming AI, automatic, nothing becomes personal. And I think that that's actually where my understanding is that the moment that things become personal, the moment you have a person in front of you, that it's not just digital or AI, then there is actually people today begin to recognize it and understand and value it. So, the role of the person in the room will become just that much more important compared to, what we were used to, at least in the last decade or so.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that we're seeing already that it's like that personal voice, that unfiltered, unedited or slightly edited, is already becoming much more important in marketing today, because everything is so AI generated that it's that authentic voice that actually resonates and breaks through the noise.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so that's a very interesting icebreaker discussion. So let's dive in into what I like to call how the frac did you get here. So tell us, tell our listeners or our watchers on YouTube a bit about your journey. I know you started off in Tel Aviv. You're based in Frankfurt today. Again, double major, economics and psychology. Now doing demand generation. How does that kind of look like?
Yeah, so I've been in B2B marketing for about almost 10 years, and in marketing in general for I think close to 13 or 14 years. A couple of years also in Deloitte, in management consultant, and starting off in ISTA, the travel agency in Israel, seeing high tech grow, that was, the natural shift for any kind of marketer who wants to go into that industry. Worked in Riskified, worked in some great companies in Israel. And then in the end of the day, a family decision. Moved, before all the mess. We thought about moving over to Frankfurt. My wife is originally from Frankfurt. We wanted to see how life is on the other side of the Mediterranean Sea. So moved here just over 2 years ago. Actually, we're going to move to Amsterdam soon. So there's going to be a next chapter in that introduction if we ever talk again. And then... worked with some great companies, some less great companies. And the previous company I worked with, there was a bit of a mess going on there. And, there were layoffs. The company was downsizing. And then I was sort of stuck in Frankfurt, no network, no connection or locally, and just started working and trying to find different gigs. You know how it is. As far as I know, that's what happens with most FCM or with many FCMOs. Something changes, they're trying to figure out something in the meantime, and then they kind of just settle into it. So I guess in that context, it also was very much my case. Started working and consulting for Bridgewise, where my former VP marketing in a different company, she just brought me in, then was introduced to Shaper as well, Shaper 3D. And now Bridgewise wanted me to work more constantly. So I'm a full-time employee, not 100%. And then the rest of the time I'm spending with Shaper on top of small other little gigs as well. Yeah.
Great. So, I think that is, and we talked about it a bit in the prep. That is a bit of a different journey to most fractionals that I typically have here on the show, which are all 100% full-time fractional, if that makes sense. I don't know if that technically even a right way to say it. But I think it's interesting that you're kind of bringing in a different perspective here. So most of your time is spent with Bridgewise, and then your fractionaling with Shaper. How does that look like in terms of how do you allocate your time, or how are you still able to make a difference with Shaper, for example?
I think that for me at least, I like this combination of having on one hand a secure full-time being part of a team, like really involved in what is happening, which is the majority of my day-to-day, and then on top of that having that consultancy part that more high-level strategic and not so hands-on as being part of FCMO. And that combination actually for me works really, really well, because not only that, I'm being introduced to new industries and working on cool stuff and having this variety, but also I'm able to take my learnings from each side, each parts of my job, and implement it, and it's not only just talk the talk, I also need to walk the walk a lot of times. If I'm talking about implementing or developing strategies, then I need to also go and implement it, like sometimes with my own hands, which as far as I know, for other FCMOs isn't necessarily always the case, right? You're there more a lot of times just to define the strategy, help, positioning, all branding, all that kind of stuff. We don't necessarily go into LinkedIn campaigns and put the ads yourself, which is sometimes something that I need to do as well. Maybe some do, but not all. I can, that's for sure.
I think I'm actually I'm personally on the side that likes to do the hands-on stuff as well. And I think it helps me stay involved. And there was actually, I just started a very heated comment section discussion on a LinkedIn post earlier today, and I'm going to go back after our session to keep arguing with people exactly on that point. But my personal perspective is exactly that. Even if you're a fractional CMO, you can't just do strategy. Can't just do brand. You have to be very much in the nitty gritty and know the details. And maybe you're building the campaigns, maybe not, but you need to understand what's going on in the campaigns. Even if you're not building them, you need to open reports and go into LinkedIn or Google Ads Manager every single day and look at what's going on and know which campaigns are running to which audiences, what's the CTR, how many leads did you get yesterday or last 7 days.
No, so I think that, I'm lucky to also have that opportunity, right? Because most cases, companies would like to have either somebody 100% or have an agency or something like that. But in my case, I'm very lucky to be in a situation where Bridgewise, like my main employer, they're happy to have me not full-time 100%. And then that just gives me the opportunity to do also the other stuff. So, this kind of stability plus all the other extra things that you can add on top of it, which are the interesting parts of FCMO. That for me is really a great combination.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I think it's interesting because in a way, I don't know if that was planned or not, but you almost in a way eliminated one of, the biggest risks in being fully committed to being fractional. Which is, at the end of the day, the nature of the beast of being independent is you have this constant roller coaster of up and down. I heard someone call it feast versus famine. So you're always either struggling to get another client or struggling to do the job because you have so many clients. And it's, I know from personal perspective and from talking to a lot of other fractionals that's a big problem for a lot of people. It's like finding that balance. But I think in a way, if you, have a main employer, but you also do fractional on the side, I think that is a pretty good balance.
Yeah, at least I feel that way.
Yeah. Okay. So, tell me a bit about how the fractional engagement with Shaper 3D looks like. So what are you in charge of? And again, because you're most of the time in your full-time gig at Bridgewise, how do you split your time and what do you actually take care of and how much do you get done with Shaper?
Right. So it's actually relatively easy, Israel business days is Sunday to Thursday. I don't work Sundays because I'm located in Europe. So Monday to Thursday, and then it leaves me Friday. So that's relatively easy, actually. I also don't feel bad about that. So with that in mind,
it's a good setup.
Yeah. What that helps me is, first of all, set clear boundaries, but more is if I look at the engagement with Shaper, it changed over time, right? In the beginning, they brought me as a demand generation expert. Shaper originally was a PLG company. They developed software for hobbyists for designing what's the word, designing properties for 3D printing. That was like their premise. Very easy, very intuitive, not your usual CAD software. But over time, they saw this opportunity with, going up market to enterprises. And that's like my bread and butter, enterprise B2B marketing. So they brought me in to kind of help them build up the motion for B2B demand generation, enterprise demand generation. So, how do you step away from analyzing registrations? How do you take that? How do you develop, like the motions around marketing, like life cycle marketing, and turn that into more nurturing, right? How do you change? How do you develop campaigns that are upper, middle, lower funnel? Develop, all the good things that you do in B2B enterprises and B2B enterprise marketing. So that's a muscle that just Shaper didn't have originally. And I helped develop that. And, as things are being built and now they want somebody full time to join them. So I now, I'm just a resource for them to kind of figure out what it is that they want to focus on next. So now I'm helping with marketing operations and reporting. So it really shifts, what it is that they need. And they see me just as a resource to kind of help them up their game with my expertise. So every time it's just something else that they need from me. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds exciting.
It is. It's interesting. Yeah, for sure.
And I agree. I mean, kind of going back to something you mentioned earlier, kind of taking learnings from one side and one company and kind of implementing and vice versa. I heard the term which I really liked, cross-pollination. So, and I think for me that really clicked. So like, it's really what it is. It's a two-way street, and you can take, one type of campaign that worked for, a fintech company and implement it in a design company, or an AI first company, or a data infrastructure, whatever type of project that you work on at that time. And, there's just so much learning to be done, and so many things that you can take and implement and kind of reshape one type of campaign. I think you wrote a while ago on LinkedIn about kind of this process of something that you did. I think it was actually with Bridgewise, where you kind of took webinars and then you chopped them into micro content, and then did like founder led. So do you want to share maybe a bit?
I have a different example that I want to talk about, because it's really something that I'm building today, which because it's like really top of mind. So Shaper, they have a pretty good social presence, and they're creating all this great content that is getting a lot of traction with their audience. And, one of the things that they recognize is, people are liking their posts on their company page. And when they kind of dived into the people that are liking them, they're seeing a lot of like really great people, their target audience, their like awesome companies that are really kind of following and engaging with their content. And they were like, this is a signal, let's do something with it. So they were, sending these leads, doing a lot of stuff manually, sending these leads like to SDRs to follow up with them. And it really developed, because like it developed into a proper pipeline, because in the end of the day, these are people that are engaging with you, they're familiar with you. And sometimes all you need is like that extra nudge to have somebody call you and get a conversation going. And when you're talking about cross-pollination, I've done this, or I'm building this. And so far it's actually interesting results is, building thought leadership. I'm not inventing the wheel here. It's like normal, but taking thought leadership content from our CEO and CBO, post it, like promoting that as thought leadership, then scraping the leads, bringing it to HubSpot, enriching it, and then running like, all these different outbound and other motions as well to kind of reach to these people as well. So again, I'm not inventing here anything, but I've just seen like the proof of concept with Shaper in a different element and then kind of trying to implement it as Bridgewise as well, and vice versa with other ideas, obviously.
Yeah, and that's great, and thank you for sharing. And I think you're 100% right. I think most of the time within marketing, we're not inventing the wheel. There's so many tried and tested motions and things that you can do, and sometimes you just need to implement things the right way or at the right time or with the right content, and sometimes it requires maybe a bit of back and forth or a bit of adjusting. But at the end of the day, we're not inventing rockets that fly into space.
No.
Let's be honest. I love what I do, and I've been doing it for almost 20 years, and I plan on doing it for at least another 20. But honestly, it's not rocket science. And still, it does require a lot of precision, a lot of strategy, a lot of gut feeling also as well, I think. But yeah, I love how that play, just works. Again, when you do it the right way, it's not something that anyone can pull off and make it work. So it does require this level of finesse with whoever is executing.
Yeah, I think that's like when you're involved in a company and you really understand it and you really are part of building the ICP and the messaging and being part of building the strategy. When you really understand who it is that you're selling and what you're selling, then that it kind of comes naturally. If you're somewhat capable, then yeah.
Exactly. So let's turn it around a bit. And we talked a bit about a success story. And now let's kind of look at the other side of that coin and look at maybe a horror story, or how I like to call it, your Frac'd-up moment.
I wouldn't name names, but back in one of the companies that I worked for in the past, there was this huge shift in messaging, and we wanted to coin a term, and we really wanted to spend big bucks and like really putting that in place. So we bought content in Business Insider and Wall Street Journal, and really spent like close to $500,000, I think, all in all in the campaign. Ooh. And, it brought all this traffic. We did like retargeting and implemented pixels and created a new landing page with a very cool and flashy video and like, all this corporate stuff that is supposed to happen. But in the end of the day, when we kind of looked at the number of leads, the MQLs, the discovery calls, all, like the business metrics outside of brand awareness and all the marketing fluff things that you could say, nothing really changed. And that really hurts. Personally, it really hurt, because also I was driving a lot of it. It was also, I was a big believer in a lot of the things that we were doing. But in the end of the day, like $500,000 almost spent and not a lot to show for. There were a lot of learnings, some really good stuff. So for example, one of the things that we did, we implemented in part of these articles that we were buying, like paid articles, we just implemented a 6 cents pixel, which then showed us, okay, who are the companies that we're getting into and who are visiting us and all of that. And that really helped, because when we then tried to kind of sell the story and salvage some of this activity, actually later on, because we had this data, we were able to kind of showcase, okay, there was some engagement, there was a touch point, but only like several months down the line. Whereas if you look at it like a month, 2 months after the campaign was launched, that was a really big, that was a really fracked up moment. Something that I also learned, that spending big bucks on, or putting your eggs into two baskets is never a good idea. That kind of where I learned that it's better to spread out a lot of your activity and work, in combination with several channels, several activities. Only then you're able to actually showcase ROI. Otherwise, like if you're just doing one thing that is really expensive, it's really difficult. Even like doing one event a year, go and splash a huge booth at one event. You're going to get leads, but like there's a lot of value that you're missing if you're not going to be doing much more other smaller events as well. As another example. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's thanks for sharing, first of all. And I think that's a very painful lesson to learn, but also a really important one. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's about what are our takeaways from those kind of harsh lessons. And I really think, I agree with your takeaway. It's spread your odds, spread your bets, don't put everything in one basket. And sometimes those big swings land correctly, but honestly, I think more often than not, they miss. And I think, if you're a billion-dollar corporation, you can afford those, swing and miss moves. But if you're a leaner startup or even a scale up and you're in millions or lower tens of millions of ARR, that's a very, very painful swing and miss.
And I think that it's not only about taking your chances and failing. It's the one thing, if you're doing just one thing, it will bound to not be successful, because even if you're reaching to good people in one medium, whether it's on this huge publication, not all of your audience is going to be there, right? And if you're not involving several different channels and what it is that you're doing in your campaign, then it's bound to not be effective. As if you would it's not just a matter of risk, it's also a matter of multiplying of effectiveness as well. Because if you're reaching the same people in other mediums as well, it's just it's not only, I read this article once and that's it. It's also, I got then retargeted on Facebook, and then I saw their ad on Amazon Prime, and then I met them or I saw them on an event. It's when you're doing all of these together, only then you're actually able to kind of get above the noise.
Thank you for sharing that story. And I imagine, and I remember from similar hits and misses, swings and misses on my part, that it's a very, very painful experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's change gears a bit, maybe on a bit of a brighter tone, and let's move to our quickfire round. So I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. Just shoot off whatever comes to your head. So fact or fiction, or how I like to call this corner, frac or fiction. I heard someone say that recently to me, and I know I have a very strong opinion, but I would love to hear yours. You need a 6-figure martech stack to do real demand generation.
No.
Talk about, you mentioned 6 Sense Pixel earlier, and I know Zoom Info and Clay, and so what's your take on that?
No. Obviously, to have all these tools is great. Not obviously. Sometimes not all of them are really good. Some of them can even create damage, but I definitely don't think that you need to spend a lot of money on martech in order to be successful, especially when you're small. You do need the basics. You do need I'm a big believer of HubSpot. So HubSpot CRMs and marketing automation, you got to have something. That there are just the basics that you got to have. But there's a lot of tools that can help you. You don't need to spend, for example, a few hundreds of dollars on Hotjar. You can just get Clarity for free, and it's awesome. Yeah. It's really good, actually.
I'm on Team Clarity. Definitely.
You're on Team Clarity. Awesome. You don't need a very fancy ABM platform like 6 Sense. You can kind of build all these different things together. You can get a cheap de-anonymization tool, and you can kind of overlay that with Apollo for sort of your enrichment and intent data there, and then work with LinkedIn and Facebook and a lot of these things. And you don't need necessarily metadata. You can kind of work with some other tools as well there to really get, it's not the 100% top of the line fancy. You don't need, if you want to get from Frankfurt to Amsterdam, you don't need to do it in a Jaguar or in a Lamborghini. You can also get into your Skoda, and it will get you there as well, right? It gets you there as well, just with a fraction of the price. So with that in mind, you can just get tools that do the job for you, that does it, maybe not 100%, does it 80%, but still does the same job and helps you get there. So I'm not a big believer of spending a ton of money on all the tools out there. And I think that it's also, putting aside the FOMO of everything of like AI agents or whatever, we're a lot of times also forgetting the basics of marketing, right? Like, the tool, if you don't have your ICP in place, if you don't know your messaging properly, if you don't have a clear USP, then all the tools in the world won't solve that for you. So get the basics done and then like build slowly. And as you build slowly, test tools and see what works and what not. And then, build your stack slowly but surely in a sustainable way. Looking back at 2021, when money was abundant, everybody was buying everything that was out there. But I think that today, there's a shift in that mindset, and I don't think that everybody needs these tools just to have them.
Okay. So on the topic of tools, what's the one tool in your toolkit that you swear by and you wouldn't do any project without?
HubSpot.
Okay. Classic answer.
Classic answer, but let's go above the classic answer. I would say, well, it depends on the type of company, right? Like if you're a proper B2B enterprise company, I would say a de-anonymization tool. I recommend Dealfront. They're cheap. They do the job well. They're not super robust. They don't have 100 different integrations, but it does the job, especially like if you want to just test it out and build it out and build the motions around de-anonymization of your website traffic, then that would be like my next go-to tool.
Next quickfire question. What's your definition of a dream client versus a nightmare client?
It's a good question because I never had a nightmare client until now.
I'm happy to hear.
Also because I worked for nightmare companies, but I didn't have a nightmare client per se. So the dream client, I guess, is just a company that is open to listening, open to testing, open to have a conversation. I don't need to agree on everything. That's all right. I don't have all the knowledge in the world. I'm not, I don't know everything, but, I have a perspective. Let's talk about my perspective. Let's talk about your perspective and understand what it is that we think that is the best. And so, like somebody to have a conversation with, whether it's the CEO, whether it's if I do part-time demand, so the CMO or VP marketing, and see what it is, also to be flexible around what is the value that I can bring to the table, and see how we can shift that where you need me as a resource. And then what would be a nightmare client? I would say, besides the obvious of not like the opposite of this, but I would say somebody that on one hand is expecting you to bring value and to deliver, but on the other hand, whenever you're proposing something, whenever you're building something and trying to roll it out, then it's like, no, this is not what we do, or this is not good enough, or this is not right for us. And it's not about just the idea. It's about like the incapability of either testing something or taking that risk. In the end, marketing is a lot of times more art than science, and you gotta test things out and sometimes just believe in what you're doing and see if it works. And if you're not capable of taking those risks, you're just going to be stuck in place.
So next question. How do you see the future of fractional?
I see the future of fractional as what I do today.
Interesting.
Where like I'm a real believer in what I do today. I think that, at least for me, right? Everybody has their own thing, but at least for me, that's the perfect setup. Again, because on one hand you have, and like I'm saying again what I said earlier, is that, FCMOs, they have this, like you said, this famine or feast. and when you have like something, a stable income, a stable work time, you're not also chasing the whole time for new clients because, you have this steady stream of work that is coming in. If I look at it in perspective of like an independent employee, then you don't need to chase the whole time your next gig or your next client, right? You can really focus on developing your network, developing your conversations, and, being involved in and just bringing value to other people in your network. And when the opportunity comes up, you can then make a decision whether it's the right one or not. And you don't have to feed this engine, which is your time. So you can be, one, really picky about what you do, but two, you don't need to always work on self-promotion as well. You can just, do your thing, and stuff will come just, as way of network or referrals or just being out there. And it's not a full-time job also to promote yourself as well.
Okay. So that leads me to our last question for today, kind of continuing on that same theme. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who's, in their marketing journey right now and they're maybe thinking about going fractional, what would that advice be?
100% start with building your network. When I if I go back, there was this layoffs in this company, and then I was sort of stuck out there in limbo. Yeah, I did work in companies in the past, but I didn't really have anybody who saw me in the context of a fractional. But moreover, I was sort of now stuck in Europe, where all my network is in Israel, right? So I didn't really have any local network. And then, where if I would send my CV to a company in Israel, because everybody would know my companies that I work with, know the value of them, they would say, okay, he's somebody that I want to talk because he worked in this company, in this company, in this company, and these are great companies. But over here in Europe, nobody knows these companies, even though it's a unicorn or a company that has been in market for many, many, many years and developed great stuff. Then it was just really difficult to get, through the door. And so I needed to rebuild everything here, and that was a challenge. So before you're thinking about, getting into fractional or adding something else, try to build your network, be active on LinkedIn, be active in communities, whether they're on WhatsApp, Slack, whatever it is. Just put yourself out there so that people know that you exist, people know that you can offer these services, and then start building it slowly through that.